Well, hello, and I've already talked about the Eachine Wizard X220s in terms of I think it's real carbon now. I'm actually going to hopefully have a chance to fly it in the morning, so I thought I'd just go through what I found thus far, getting it out of the box and stuff. Now, this was a receiver-only version, so we had this little wire coming up. Unfortunately, I mean, although it was rather obvious, the instruction manual for this one, and it does call itself a quick start guide, but there's nothing else online that gives any more information. There's really nothing in here about what to do or what's going on. This is really weird because this is from Eachine, and if you look at the Eachine for the Lizard 95 or the Aurora 100, it's great. It's full of colour pictures and details loads, but this has hardly got anything. So I ended up having to take the top panel off and the side panels just to double check it did connect to one of the UARTs for S-Bus on the F4 board, which it did. And then I had to put this back, which is a real pain. These side panels are really hard to line up and get everything in. Now, one of the things about the side panels is it closes off the amount of room you've got in there. I was intending to use this XM Plus receiver, which would have fitted in, but unfortunately I cocked up the firmware flashing and connected it wrong and blew it up. So I've had to use this X4R here, which, because it's still got the pins in and I want to use it as something else, I didn't want to depin it, it's not going to fit inside. So at the moment this is sort of tied onto the back of the camera mount, which is all a bit dodgy, but it seems to hold in. It's not going anywhere. And the antennas seem like they're going to stay hopefully mostly in place, but we'll see. So things I like about this quad is, I mean, despite the, is it glass fibre, is it carbon? It seems carbon to me. It's really strong in the arms. I don't think the arms are going to have a problem. Not sure about the top plate and the side plates, but we'll see. CCD camera though, which is really nice, and that looks pretty good. Banggood antenna, see how that is. On the, underneath the strap here, you've got, you probably can't see that, you've got one of these plates. It's kind of a rubber coating. So rather than Velcro, which I use normally on my batteries, if it goes up this side, it's a real non-stick surface. You put that down there and the battery doesn't want to move against it. It generates such sort of friction. So that should hopefully hold it on okay. I've put these little pad things that came in the box on. I don't know if they'll do much. And I've tightened up all the motors as it's suggested on the website, as they seem to be soft mounted. A few things I didn't particularly like. This is like a session or a Ramcam free mount. There's only a small space here where you can put a zip tie, and that means because there's only one through, it can kind of move around a bit. I prefer it to keep more solid really, because I want my GoPro session looked after, not bashed around. It's kind of loose, but we'll see how that goes. Normally I'm someone who has a piece of foam which I then put a battery strap around and holds it in quite tight. So this is feels a little more loose. A really bad or weirdly thought out design decision is, if you look at these straps, you'll see just this black stuff here, because that's the straps going under and coming around again. But under there is the VTX, which has a display which tells you what band, channel and power you're on, and a button to press it. But of course you can't see it. I had to push that tape down, get a screwdriver in a very bizarre angle to see, and then look over like this to try and see what I was on. Its default is on A1 at 25 milliwatts. A quick press changes to channels, a longer press changes to bands, an even longer press changes to 200 milliwatts and 600 milliwatts. So I've got this set up eventually as F1 on 200 milliwatts, which is just my normal channel. But it's so inaccessible, and you don't want to pull these out because these are a right pain to thread through. It's just could be better. Some other way of seeing that in, like, there's a nice big hole here. If the button and the display were there, then you wouldn't have a problem, but they're not. LEDs are nice, beeper's nice. Being able to angle the camera, all good, these are good. These props, I mean, lots of people have reported these are very power hungry. And these are 50-50 ones, which is pretty heavy going on a 4S battery. They do give plenty in the box, but I've got some regular 3-bladed 50-40s and some 2-blade blunt nose 50-45s, so I might try those as well, see how it goes on those. Setup wise, I went into Betaflight, it was already on 317, which is nice. D-Shot 600 was enabled, 8K gyro, 2K PID loop, all good. The weird thing was, because I went in, it was a normal default OSD, which is awful, which is like the artificial horizon and the slider bars up the side. I changed it over to normal, checked it all fitted on my display okay, and I noticed the voltage was at 0. And it turned out it didn't have the VBAT monitoring enabled. I don't know if that was just some oversight really, so worth checking out. And there's a little covered USB hole here to plug into. So yeah, first impressions, really looking forward to flying it. Feels very solid. It's just such a shame that the manual or pamphlet, there's just not enough to it in terms of setting up, in terms of how to work the VTX and stuff, because these all-in-one RTFs are generally aimed towards the beginner flyers, and there's packages in this to have the radio included and the goggles included, so obvious that's where they're going, so it needs a little bit more than this. But yeah, let's see how it flies. I'm going to charge up some 4Ss and go out there and see what happens. See you then. And so we're into the air. First battery, first takeoff, and my immediate thought is, there's a lot of noise on this picture, isn't there? It was really quite noticeable. It's not actually that bad in the playback, but it was really, it really felt jarring on the Fat Sharks. The other thing I can tell you on this first battery is, it felt pretty smooth. It was reacting nicely. It's not juddery at all. There's no vibrations or anything, but it did feel like it didn't have much, either in terms of agility or speed. Couple of reasons for this really, and I'll just come out so you can see the HD picture as well, and you can see if that feels smooth. So one of the issues here is I am on the default PIDs, which has a super rate of like 0.7, which doesn't give you that much. So when you try and do things quickly, there's not really much there unless you go to the real extents of the sticks. Also, the camera angle is not up enough. So whenever I'm trying to go faster, I'm seeing a lot of grass, which is not much good. And going into turns like this, when I try and get the speed back up, the power translates into lift rather than forward flight. So that was the problems just with the setup of getting this right. In the air, it felt absolutely fine. I'm kind of just meandering a bit on this first battery because that's kind of what I had on this particular setup. So I'm not doing anything particularly clever or interesting, but I do feel that the props seem to have an enormous amount of pitch on them, but you really don't get that much power. And when I blip the throttle, I do notice that the OSD is flickering and the noise obviously gets worse. So it's not a brilliant situation, but these are initial setup things. I mean, in terms of flying, if this was a beginner setup, it wouldn't actually be a bad thing in terms of the flight characteristics, because they're really quite gentle and quite easy to handle. The only thing that's really getting my goat is the noise on the FPV camera. I really hope that can be sorted out somehow, because it's really something where you need a clean display, because obviously the worst conditions you get in terms of lighting, it tends to look even worse on the screen as well. So what we'll do is move on to the next battery and see how we do. So this is an Omnibus F4 board, and the good thing about that, aside from the OSD, you can go in and you can mess around with your rates. So what I did here is I just upped my rates from 0.7 to 0.8. These are the super rates for roll, pitch and yaw, and they make a hell of a lot of difference. This is what I have on my normal quad, so I'm fairly used to it.
So I'm off again on battery 2, and I've upped my camera angle a bit, and I'm trying to put some power down, and you can see I'm getting worse flickering there, and also the quad seems to be yawing off slightly to the side, which I was like, what's going on here? Now, in retrospect, I'm not sure if this was a problem with prop wash or how the power works in those props, or it could have even been the wind blowing onto those side panels. But it was so weird that I actually thought something must be catching on this, something got to be wrong. So I brought it in to actually check it out and make sure it was okay. Of course, it was okay. There was nothing bad about it. It was absolutely fine. I had a play with the camera angle, and on this third battery, I would say it was probably the better flight from my point of view, which is why I managed to forget to turn my GoPro session on. But I felt like I was starting to get a bit more of a feel for it. So what I could say about it is that I don't like the props at all. They're weird. I know it's a bit technical. They don't seem to get any power down. They make an awful lot of noise. They seem to draw an awful lot of amps. But when you put power on it, aside from the screen flickering and the OSD switching itself off, you don't actually get that much thrust in what I can get from it. That's my impression anyway. I expect a lot more, really, especially when it's dragging this sort of power down. And you seem to get some vibrations as well when really going through it on the throttle. And that I'm seeming to think these are weird shaped props, and it's suffering from a different type of prop wash than normal, which I'm not particularly enjoying. At the same time though, the quad is starting to feel a little bit better. The only thing is when it's not reacting as I want to when I'm getting the power on. I think that's down to the props. But at least we're getting some reasonable runs. We're starting to be able to hold the height a little bit better. And it feels like only air. The flight controller wise, no problems. Spin it around, roll it around, it's all good. It's just got this horrible picture for noise again. Okay, so we're on to LiPo 4, which is the last battery of the day. And I actually managed to get, if you can see in the overlay here, I've managed to get the angle of the FPV camera the same as the GoPro mount, which is spot on, because obviously what you want to see is what you're recording. However, if you look to the top, you'll see this big dark area, and that's the GoPro Session mount, which is now appearing in the top of the screen, because as you angle the camera up, there's a slight overlap where the session mount will go, and you end up with this. So it's not particularly ideal. I mean, it's I don't look up to the sky all the time as I'm flying around, but I'm finding it quite distracting, the fact that it's there. So it's not perfect. And again, this LiPo felt okay. I still wasn't happy with the props. It was fine as long as I kept the power on sort of medium. As soon as I put any sort of power down, it sort of vibrates about a bit, the yaw goes a little bit crazy, the screen flickers, and the noise gets worse. So there are certainly issues to resolve. All in all, not a bad way to spend for LiPos, but I was hoping for something a bit better and a bit more flyable out of the box.
Well, to be honest, that was a bit of a mixed bag, wasn't it? I mean, on the default PIDs and just meandering around, it was fine. It was pretty smooth. It didn't do anything particularly remarkable. It just sort of meandered happily around and was okay. We had a lot of noise in the camera, which I didn't like. And I don't know if that's just dirty power coming from the ESCs, or it's something else. Now, the worst thing about it seems to be these props. These things seem to just suck the amps away in your battery, make a lot of noise, but I found they didn't really generate any power. And once again, sort of meandering along was fine. As soon as I actually put the power down, we'd get the shakes. I don't know if these are generating their own horrible wash over the surfaces. It seemed to be at a certain angle at a certain speed. It was sort of yawing off to itself, which just wasn't happening at other speeds. So, what to do about that? I think, I'm not sure if part of the problem with the camera is the amp draw on these things. So I figure let's go and put some regular, these are 50/40 King Kongs. Let's put them on there and give it a chance and see how it goes with that. The other pain was, in order to try and get the speed down, the camera angle up at that equals seeing this camera mount in the top, which isn't ideal. It's not the worst thing ever, but we'll see if we can manipulate that. But yeah, let's put different props on and see how we go first off. Okay, King Kong 50/40s are on. You can see the difference in the pitch and the design. Don't think it's going to fix all the problems, but at least they're a known quantity, so I can stop blaming these then at least. Battery's on charge, so let's hopefully get to the field in the morning, because it's 10:15, and see what happens.
So we're back at the field, another 4 lipos, and let's try it out with these new props. Still got the noise in the camera, but the feeling of the quads are a bit better. I feel like I can hold the height lower a bit better now. But I do notice that something's going weird with the voltage. I was just glancing over and I was like, hang on, this is a fresh lipo. Did I definitely charge this? And it seems to be jumping around all over. And I've got initially no particular explanation for this. The quad is now starting to feel a bit weird, like I'm not getting the power through properly. It started off okay and then something's gone different, but I just try giving it a good blip here and this happens. Oh dear. Well, aren't we doing well with this thing? It seemed to be going okay-ish, but then had a bad response. Now what I noticed about this, other than the fact that that prop's done in, is this motor here is absolutely roasting. You can't put your finger on it, it actually burns you. It's only, these are all fine, it's just this one's absolutely shagged.
Well, I would have liked to have carried on and see what we could have done to make this fly smoother, but if we take a close-up look at a normal motor, you'll be able to see the nice shiny gold coloured enamel there, and the stinking hot motor you will see is a blackened husk of burnt metal. So that is not a usable motor. It does actually spin, but it instantly gets scorching hot, and this is very knackered. We don't want to be using that. So I'll see if I can get the motor replaced. I mean, this was sent for review from Banggood, which was very nice of them. So hopefully they might feel like they should send me a motor to replace it. So review-wise, a little bit inconclusive. Obviously, on this particular one, it didn't do very well, did it? I mean, aside from the motor blowing up, which I'm guessing is just one of those things, I don't see a particular pattern. I had a search around looking for forum posts, looking for videos about motors exploding, and I just seem to have been unlucky. I then stripped the quad down, you see it's still half stripped here, and I checked for any motor shorts back to the, motors shorting to the frame or screws fouling the motor windings. I couldn't find that. I think I've literally just got a duff motor which killed itself. Ignoring that, I'm still not too happy with it because of the picture. If we could solve that picture problem, I'd be a lot happy with it. Two things needed to happen. Those props seem pretty bad and need to go. I'm not sure what the right prop is for that, because I only had 2 minutes of flying it on 50/40 free blades and then the whole thing exploded. Obviously I wasn't over-propping it. If anything, it was under-propped. So I'm not worried that that caused the motor issue. But yeah, there's something better for this one. But if I can get the leg replaced, it'll give me a chance to get in there and see what's going on. That flickering OSD, that's slightly reminiscent of a grounding problem I used to get with the MW OSD, depending how you hook up the micro minim. It's obviously a different beast, but I don't know, something to search for. Anyway, but yeah, I'll have to draw it to a close there because this video is really long already. Hopefully I'll be back with a part 2 or a part 3 or however many parts, and let's see what we can do to actually get this flying. But I'm afraid as a ready-to-fly quad, it doesn't quite match up its requirements. I think this has a potential to be a good flyer. There's some really good bits in here. I don't know whether the VTX is the whole problem with the picture or just the wiring, but the rest of it seems fairly sound, so I'm going to hopefully come back and do some more with it and fingers crossed get this flying nicely. See you in the next one. Bye for now.